So the second part of this tutorial is adding those animations, and we could do that through Protopie Studio. Go ahead and open Protopie and it'll give you this little modal. You want to select a new Pi, and the default screen would be an empty device, and it says that it is the iPhone 8. Now you also get a preview screen that I just have to pull up from the other screen, and I'll just set this to the side for now. But the first thing that you want to do is you need to face the device or the screen that we're going to edit on. So go ahead and select device, click desktop, and click HD 1080. And that will give you a larger device to play around with. The very next thing that you want to do is you want to import those assets from Adobe Xd. Now you don't need to do it one at a time or separate layers. What you could easily do with Protopie is select the import button and select Adobe Xd. You'll get this modal to pop up, and you need to have Xd opened. You could have it in the background running, but essentially it'll pick up which file you're on and which artboard you want to import. If you have multiple artboards, it will list everything here. Our artboard is called Live Life, so go ahead and select that. The import size that we wanted at would be at 1x. You could do 2x or 3x or 4x, but just remember you need to size it down. The higher x or the higher import size you go, the better resolution you'll get, but just don't forget to size it down. In this case, we're just going to use 1x for now. Finally, you just want to go ahead and select import. And there we are. Protopie has got everything set up and laid out perfectly for you. The next thing you want to look at is on the far left, we have the layers. And so it's very messy, and this is not a good idea when coming to Protopie and adding these animations, or fortunately for any software. What you want to do is you want to organize these correctly, have them organized in groups. And what you want to add is a nav group, a headline or a CDA group, or a first impressions group. But just make it organized so that it is very easy for us to animate just these different layers. I'm going to go ahead and organize these, and in the next screen, it'll be a lot easier to look at. The first thing we're going to go ahead and get started on is I want this scrollable in the preview section. Now you can see over here that it's not scrollable, and I'm trying to scroll it. So the way you do this is you need to group every single item that is in this screen. Something in Protopie that is called a container, or scrollable container, I'm sorry. And I think you could find it right here in the container dropdown, and click scroll container, not scrollable, but select scroll container. And let's grab all of our layers and group it with container 4. And then when we select container 4, we want this to be the entire screen. Now, if we move over to the preview section, you could see that I could scroll now. The first animation in the original dribble post was the creating a safer world to discover. Floats in or scrolls up, and it has a really nice easing to it. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. To make it easier on us when animating, we want to disable everything around us except the item that is being animated. So let's go ahead and do that. And the way you do that is you'll select any layer or group that you want. We'll go ahead and get started with the top nav, and we'll just disable it with this eye and this diagonal line next to the layer. So go ahead and click that, and that will disable it. And we're just going to do that for all the other ones. Now I've gone ahead and separated the headline bottom and the headline top. That is for us to create this domino effect where one comes in and the one follows. So the thing that we want to do now is create that animation. And the way we did that was we'll go ahead and select a shape of a rectangle. Now, how we had this set up, I'll go ahead and disable the bottom too so that we can have a better representation. Well, how we had this set up was we had the creating a safer world behind what it was, a white block. I know this one's great. We'll change that in a second, but we had it set up behind a white block. And when the animation starts, it just jumps in behind that white block. So let's go ahead and create that now. Now go ahead and select the rectangle tool and change the fill to a white. And then that creates, I can't even click. That creates a, that illusion that, hey, it's just flowing up. So let's go ahead and actually get started on that animation now. Now in Protopie, they've got these little section over here called an add trigger or create interactions. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and select add trigger, and they'll give you a drop down of the different triggers you could create. The one we're going to do is a start trigger. Now, when you've selected a trigger, there will be a plus sign or a drop down that gives you a lot of the interactions, or I believe they're called reactions in Protopie. But what it does is it can offer you, the move or the scale or the rotation, pretty much the reaction of whatever the trigger is. So if our trigger is start, what do we want it to do on start? We want it to react. And so in this case, with the creating a safer world, we want it to react in a way from it being position Y from being, negative 30 pixels or move down from 30 pixels. We want it to react and go up. So let's go ahead and do that. Using the start trigger, go ahead and select move. And how I like to explain my animations is that there's always an initial state and an end state. The end state will always reflect wherever you want the layer to end up at, and the initial one is where you want it to start at. So how we want this to start would be a negative 60 pixels on the y-axis. So we want it to go up. We want it to be hidden behind this white block. So let's go ahead and do that in the initial state. In the move reaction, it'll tell us that we need to select a layer. So let's go ahead and select this, creating a safer world layer. Now the creating a safer world layer is called a headline top. So in the reaction, go ahead and select headline top. And in the position, there's an option to use move to or move by. We're going to select move to for now. And we're going to input 146. Now the way that I know I want to choose 146 is the fact I want the layer to be moved to 146 pixels on the y-axis. So when I click 146, you can see that our previous section just jumped straight down and hid. That's what we want our initial animation to be at. And then the end state would be 0 pixels, or setting our 146 back to 0, back to where we want it to be. So let's go ahead and create more space over here. Now we do want, this is the duration, so there's keyframes, and what we could do is go ahead and set this to 0. So the initial animation would be 0, and we don't need to worry about easing. We'll worry about easing on the end state. Go ahead and select another reaction, and this reaction will be move as well. And let's put 0. So you can see our preview section going from the 146, which is down here. I think it'll be better if I show you here. Our Y is set to 0 currently, and if we move it down 40, 50, 60, 70, you could see the Y be just played with over here, going down and up. So we could rename this actually, and it'll be a lot easier if we do rename it. So we'll put initial positioning, and then we could just do end position here. Now, what we could do also is the easing and the duration and the start delay. Now the easing that I use would be a cubic Bezier. I believe that's how you say it. If it's not, then someone let me know. And you go ahead and put this at 0.5. We'll do 0.02, and then 0.5 again, and then a 0.9. And the duration of this, we want it to be at 0.6. 0.6. And so you can see that it's just a lot smoother here, especially when the duration is turned up. Cool. And let's go ahead and make the start delay at 1 second. And we need to keep that in mind. Or actually, we'll just leave it at 0. It's not a big deal. I'm sorry, what it was 0.05. I forgot to add the other 0. So 0.05, 0.002, 0.05, and then 0.9. Now that we have the top layer set, let's do the bottom one, and it'll be the exact same idea. So let's get that started. Create a new rectangle, and we can enable the headline bottom back in. Now when we enable it, the rectangle 1 is covering it, so let's just reposition that. And now we want to do the exact same thing. We could actually just copy and move it above headline 1 bottom. And we'll do the exact same thing, so we need to push this down a bit here. Now we also need to add a trigger. So it's up to you. You can add all the triggers you want, or you can kind of set them in different groupings. So in this case, our CTA would all go in the start key. So we'll put start, and then headline. Oh, that's not how you spell. Headline. And always be sure to name your layers. You don't want to get confused. So rectangle 1 was the cover, or headline top cover. We could go off that. Headline top cover. And our other rectangle 1 copy would be headline bottom cover. Perfect. So the to discover, or the headline bottom, needs to be positioned under and then scroll up, and we'll do the exact same thing that we did with the start headline. So let's go ahead and see if we could hide this first. And we know that we need to set the Y at 271. Go ahead and undo that. So start another move. And in this one, our start delay will move it by 0.2 seconds. So it could happen 0.2 seconds after. Oh, I'm sorry. The initial is just going to be set back to a 0 duration with the Y at 271. We don't need the 0.5. Now, One thing I do want to mention is sometimes when you create a new reaction, it will ask you to select the layer that you want. But a cool tip that I like to recommend is if you have the layer selected and you add a reaction, it will automatically select the layer. So you don't need to pretty much add layers to every reaction you do. So the next thing is to add an end position, and we'll do the same thing. So we'll do move. The move is going to be set to, what was our headline bottom? Headline bottom Y was set to 143 as our end state. Go ahead and click 143. And I'm saying end state. I don't know if I'm not speaking correctly, but pretty much the last or the final state of the layer of where you want it to be positioned. So our final move or end position is going to be at 143, which is how we have it set up. So we'll do end position here. And now if we add a start delay, because we want it to come after, we can go ahead and add a start delay of 0.4 for now. And if we go ahead and replay this, you could see it come right after, but now we need to add the duration in the correct easing. So we'll have the same easing. So the cubic Bezier with 0.5, 0.02, 0.05, and a 0.9. And the duration will have the same exact duration of 0.6. That's correct. So refreshing that, it's a little too slow. So let's fix the start delay to 0.2. And let's make this viewable better. So refresh. Nice. So it's really nice. It's really smooth, and the easing is proper. The next thing would be the navigation. And what the navigation does in our animation is just fade in. There's no crazy animations there. So go ahead and add a trigger of start, and we could just call this fade in nav. So let's go ahead and go back to our layers, click top nav, and select the eyeball to re-enable it. Now that we have our trigger, we want to enable a reaction. So the reaction that we want would be just a fade in. So let's go ahead and add that. Go ahead and select the drop down below and click opacity. Our initial opacity is going to be set to 0. We did not select the top nav and then select the reaction, so we have to select a layer. Go ahead and search for top nav. Now top nav is enabled and our opacity is set to 0. It will disappear in the preview section. Go ahead and add another opacity, and this is our end state opacity, and then buff the opacity all the way to 100. And you can see it up here after a 0.2 duration, but it's too quick. We want this to start at a 0.6 delay and the duration to be 0.6 as well. And for easing, we can kind of just create a, leave it at ease in and ease out. That looks fairly well, but duration, let's go ahead and make it at 1 and see how that looks when we refresh. So you got the headline coming in and the navigation kind of just fading in right after. Looks pretty good. On to the next thing. Now the next thing what we want to do is show the carousel, or what we called it as like a little paragraph text. And the way we did that was go ahead and re-enable it first. And we had a transition in with a white background as well. So we're using this trick a lot where it's a white background and it kind of just, the scale of it shrinks. And one thing to mention, the fan on my computer is getting loud. So if that is bothering you, I do apologize in advance. Now go ahead and select the carousel that we have enabled. And we do have a slide 1 and slide 2 that I did create. I'm not going to do that transition carousel. I just want to show you the basics. And I think that you guys will be smart enough to go ahead and be able to add that animation in. So let's just disable slide 2 for now and just leave slide 1 enabled. But what we did was we used a rectangle again and put it the same size as the entire container, turn it into white. And you can see it just hide. The red is still showing in the preview, so let's cover that. And it's, okay. So Protopie sometimes has little sizing issues where when zoomed out too far, a lot of programs do this, but when zoomed out too far, it kind of acts as if it's still being shown, but it's not. But we'll go ahead and fix that in. Now, once it's covered, what we want it to do is to change the width. So after the creating a safer world to discover has been animated in, we want this to follow along and the width to go to 0, like so. To do that, go ahead and select a new trigger with the start, add a new reaction, and select scale. Go ahead and select the layer. Let's name this layer. We'll say it carousel block. And now the carousel block needs to be added here. Carousel block. Now, we don't know the width just yet, so let's go ahead and select that. The width of the carousel block is at 544.09. Let's just put 545. And the height is 230. This is just to make it easier on us. Now, with the scale again, what we want the initial width to be was 545. So the initial width was 545, and then the end state, we want it to scale down to a width of 0. Let's go ahead and do the start delay at 1.8 seconds. So it does it there. It's very hard to see. Let's zoom in. It does it, but it's not doing it the way we want it to. First of all, it's too fast and it's going in the wrong direction. How we want it to go would be, go ahead and select carousel block and change the origin to the right side. Now, it's doing it, but it's doing it too fast, and that's where we'll add the easing and the duration. Go ahead to scale and select the cubic Bezier, select the same easing. Maybe Protopie will watch this and pick up on this. I wish we can create our own and just save it. 0.05, 0.9, duration 0.8. Yeah, so anyone who has contacts with Protopie, see if we could add our own custom easing and duration and save it as a preset. But looks wonderful now. It still flows in. It's a little too slow. Let's go ahead and do a 0.6. Beautiful. One thing I forgot to mention is we always want to preserve how our UI looks on the Protopie screen. We don't want to leave this white block just sitting here. So here's a quick way to fix that. Now what we want to do is go ahead and turn down the opacity of the block, but that would ruin the animation. What we want to do is select a opacity for the initial state and put that to 100. So what that will do is in our window here, or the UI here, won't get affected. So we preserve the look of it. But in our animation, once the animation starts, the scale of it is set to 545 and the opacity is turned back all the way up. And when we refresh, we still have that precise animation that we originally wanted without hurting the look or the integrity of the UI that we're working with here. Now for the buttons, what we did, we had that white background button, and then we had the black one, and then we had another white, and then we had the red come in. That's going to be a little more complex. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it to the white background because that alone will take 5 or 6 minutes of just copy pasting of what we did. And I'm sure there's an easy way to figure that out if you are following along. So what we're going to do is same model that we had was the white background, and then it just slides over. Same thing that we did with the carousel and the discover buttons, that same idea of having this white background. And when it comes to code, the way that you could kind of think of recreating this is with those before and after CSS pseudo elements. So you can create an after and pretty much create it with a white background with the width of the actual layer, and then just play off that. So you can kind of think of these backgrounds as after pseudo elements in CSS. So let's go ahead and get this button animated. Go ahead and select the rectangle, and we want this rectangle to be covering on top. Go ahead and make it the correct size, make it white, and what we want to do is we want to scale it down when the animation starts. So go ahead and add a new trigger, add a start, a plus sign, a scale, and the initial scale of it is the 191 width, and we'll set that initial scale to 191 width. And what we want it to end at is a scale of the width of 0. And the start delay will do 1.2, duration 1.6 with a cubic Bezier of 0.5. 0.02, 0.05, oops, 0.05, and a 0.9. Let's see if that did anything. That didn't do anything. Oh, that's because we don't have the layer selected. Now what the layers is going to be called, we'll do link cover or discover cover. Go ahead and select both and select discover cover. So I realized that the layer that we did select wasn't discover, it was discover cover instead of the discover. So let's refresh that and it works, but we need to fix the sizing. Go ahead and do it like so, and we need to fix the origin. And looking at it, it starts a little too late. Let's do 0.8 and then 0.6. So oh, the size is not even right. Width 191. Let's do a width of 205. Great. You can add a little more to it. I think that it could use some spice, but just this little small animation can get you started on creating the other animation that we did have in the original post. So the next thing that you want to do is reveal that image. And how we did that was the exact same way that we did everything else, how we're revealing everything else. So honestly, I'm going to go ahead and do that and then just play it. I do want to save some time in this tutorial. So to save time, I went ahead and did the exact same animation that we have on the other ones, and it would look like so. Everything would appear just as nice. And what I want to add for the final touch here is that scroll, auto scroll that I kind of have in the dribble animation. And the way to do that in Protopie is select a trigger. We'll do a start trigger. And in the start trigger, we do want to select a reaction called scroll. And so go ahead and select scroll over here. And you want to select the layer. Now the layer that we have as a scrollable container or a scroll container was the container 4, this one right here. And what we want container 4 to do is scroll by, we'll do a scroll by 800 pixels. And we'll do the start delay of this at 2 seconds with a duration of 1.4. We'll leave it at ease in and out for a cubic. And let's go ahead and refresh that. So at 1.2, it should scroll. Wow, that is incredibly fast. Oh, the duration. We'll do 2 second duration. So at 2 seconds in, it will scroll down by 800 pixels. So that's it for our animation. I'm very sorry that my fan got loud on my laptop. Hopefully it doesn't disturb the audio. Same as the last video that we created. Let's go ahead and watch this animation one more time. Perfect, and the scroll still works because of that scrollable container. That does it for this video. Have a wonderful day.